excited to get going.
Well, Ray, welcome to the Irrelevant Podcast. We appreciate you coming on, man. Why don't you, for the people who are clueless and sticking their head in the mud and the sand in the Instagram, social media world, or the strength and conditioning world, just go ahead and kind of tell us who you are and just give us a little bit of background so you can get going.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Ray Zingler. I've been a business owner. This is our 13th year owning and operating Zingler Strength, which we're basically a performance facility that works with not only student athletes, but also adults as well, where we have kind of an adult fitness program and we try to train our adults like athletes, obviously a little bit different than our student program, but it's really just a pretty simplistic approach to fitness where the biggest thing that I always tell people is we're big on consistency over the long haul versus trying to wine and dine you and wow you with a 3-week trial, so that's pretty much who I am. And again, just trying to learn like everybody else. So that's me.
So when you kind of give us some of your background, I know you said, was your dad was a strength and conditioning coach, correct?
So my dad was a college football coach.
Okay.
And he ended up getting out of college football coaching because, he found I was 4, my sister was 2. He was raising or spending more time with other people's kids than he was his own. So he got out of the college football coaching world and he went into the entrepreneurship realm, and he owns a commercial flooring business. Well, anyway, fast forward a bunch of years, he was our middle school football coach. And one thing that Dad was very big on that I still believe in today is that if you're going to play a contact sport like football, you need to prepare the body for the demands of the game. And he saw, here we are encouraging a collision-based sport in football with a bunch of kids who aren't physically prepared to play the game. So one day after practice, this was 2004. So he said, hey, we're going to start this strength and conditioning program at the Zingler's basement, to where Dad and I went to the local fitness depot and bought a glorified Gold's Gym and put it down in the basement. And he said, something crazy, $5-10 a session or whatever, but it's voluntary. If you want to come on, whatever. Well, that first day we get a knock at the door. And Mom's got no idea what the hell's going on. There's 30 kids sitting at the front door of our house, wanting to get in on this strength and conditioning thing. So it kind of turned into what was supposed to be just something for me and a couple of my buddies, actually turned out to be a pretty neat business model that Dad had no intention of starting, because again, he was just trying to help our little football team have a successful, season. This was after my 7th or 8th grade year, or whatever it was. And then eventually it kind of morphed into having to charge obviously a little bit more to keep up with the demand of it. But then it got outside of just our football team. And it was kind of became a known thing in our community that this guy, my dad, was working with student athletes in the community, developing strength, and it was one of those things that was almost unheard of, because you'd have the speed and agility or the performance type places, but there was nobody like really teaching the kids the fundamentals of training. And once I graduated high school, Dad, at the time, he was buying the business. He had a partner that he was in a commercial flooring business with. He ended up buying him out, going all in on that. And right as I was graduating high school, Dad essentially said, I don't have time to serve 2 masters. He saw the potential in his flooring business, which is thriving today. And he also saw my kind of love for strength and conditioning. And he kind of just said, hey, we've got a couple of clients. He was purposely kind of slowing it down a little bit as his business was ramping up. But he saw the passion I had for it. I knew I wanted to be in the strength and conditioning world because of my passion for training. But learning from Dad, who got out of the college sector because he was spending too much time, training or coaching other people's kids, it was kind of a perfect blend for me that I could get my strength and conditioning fix, but not at the expense of 100 hours a week, working in the public sector, So from there, it's one of those things. It was just put one foot in front of another. I'd had 2 clients, 2 turned to 4, 4 turned to 8. Next day I look up and I got kids doing step ups on a staircase in a residential house, and I didn't know what to do. And, to be honest with you, it's the only job I've ever had. I've never worked for somebody else. I've never done an internship. I just kind of started thinking I had it all figured out. Then here I am 13 years later, learning how much I don't actually, know. So that's pretty much it in a Cliff Notes version.
Seems like all the great ones kind of start in those small spaces or those compact places. There's those obscure like really random places. So
Right. Yeah. It was, Joe DeFranco is a big mentor of mine, obviously Zach Evanesh, some of those guys. And I saw what they did. And, it was one of those things where it was like, I just saw that you don't have to have all the bells and whistles. I was just this regular dude who was obsessed with training. And then I took my obsession and I poured it into what my dad always preached to me, which was serving other people. As a Christian, that's the foundation of our life. And now I just took what I loved and then I applied a shit ton of service to it. And turns out I got pretty lucky.
I don't think luck has anything to do with it. I mean, I have a huge respect for what you do. What were some of those early foundational principles that kind of gave your training a base for what you needed to do, or like what was different about what you guys were doing? I know you said it was kind of simplistic, but
right.
What was it that you were doing that made it so effective, or was it just the consistency factor?
Yeah, and again, it was like I was growing up in that phase. I don't know how old you guys are. I'm 33 now, but I was growing up where like that like speed and agility thing was really starting to come in with the parachutes and the rubber bands and all this stuff. And I know it's been around longer than that, but seemed like it was really getting heavy when I was coming up. And, it was one of those things that like, even as a young kid, and, I was exposed to it when I was 13, 14 years old, because that was what the football coach saw and thought you should do and this and that. But here I am like watching us do this stuff. And I'm not a track guy, but I'm looking at like the running mechanics of some of these kids who are tethered to bungee cords, and I'm seeing them do all these things. And, our arms are swinging out here trying to overcome resistance. And I'm just thinking to myself, even as a young guy, it's like, if we're having to have poor mechanics to overcome this quote unquote resistance, does that not mean that we should obviously build stronger muscles to be able to maintain proper form if we're going to use these modalities? So it was almost like what I saw was like there was nobody focused like on the youth. Everything is like train like the pros and all this stuff. And all it is it's adult athlete training that we try to like dwindle down into giving us a kid's version. But in reality, nobody was there like cutting their teeth on the youth athletes. Everybody wants to brag about they train this pro guy, that pro guy, blah, blah, blah. Dude, give me 50, 14-year-old snot-nosed kids that just want to get stronger and feel more confident. And I know with them, because their training age and hell, their real age is so low, they have to give, they need the basics with all this. If they have to have it, we live in this world of premature advancement, and my kid is this and my kid is that. And it's all bullshit. It's one of those that I saw that if I can make the training so painlessly simple, not only will they benefit from it because they're beginners, obviously, but what that does for me is that frees up the majority of my bandwidth to be able to pour into these kids between the ears. I make the neck down stuff so easy, and I put so much emphasis and effort into the individual. I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, how was your week? Like, I give a shit, man. Like, I really, really care of getting into the weeds. And that makes, in my opinion, all the training, I don't want to say insignificant, but, when we're dealing with the world of human performance, a lot of times, you guys know it, we know max effort, dynamic. Dude, these kids want to look at their abs and feel good about themselves. What training you do, whether you're pro Olympic lifting or anti-Olympic lifting, all the shit works. The best coaches that are working with kids are not drinking the premature advancement juice, and they're pouring into kids, making sure they do things the right way. I'm big on KPIs. It's one of those things that I've always said that the most important key performance indicator has nothing to do with the program you run. Can you build an environment where kids want to be there? Because if they want to be there, now their attendance is going to raise. And if we raise the attendance, guess what happens to the floor and the ceiling? It all raises. So I kind of went a different route of, again, not that I'm not a disciplinarian, I push hard work, but it's like, if I can create an environment where these kids feel loved and valued and they want to be there, now once I have this access and I get them to understand that I am pro them, a lot of these kids these days, they have the shit beat out of them by a bunch of people that don't really care about them. If I can show them that I care, and they'll come to an environment that they know they feel safe and they can thrive in, and all you do is feed them the basics. I've trained over 2,000 kids in 13 years and haven't had one that didn't see results. And I'm probably the simplest programmer you'll ever talk to.
Kudos to you for wanting to train with young kids too, because a lot of the stuff you see, like you said, a lot of people don't want to work with those kids. They want to work with the elite, the high level. Right. They want to try to get their name out there. They want to work with XYZ, but you chose a different path and it's worked out really well for you, obviously, by just doing some of the simplistic stuff. So can you kind of go into that just with people? Like what are people missing that you do that is so simple that they're missing out on?
Yeah, so it's funny, like as a sports performance coach, at the end of the day, it's not my job to give people what like I like or what works for me. Obviously, I have to find out. I'm always looking at the buckets, right? I'm trying to find out what is there a lot of, what is there not enough of. And it's funny, I make the joke all the time that if let's just say our modern youth athletes, like in today's world, we're being trained like the block country kids in the 70s where it's like they build these kids up from 5 years old and it's weightlifting, 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 weightlifting. I wouldn't be selling as a performance coach more weightlifting, right? I'd find the buckets that they aren't in. Maybe that's sports specific training. Maybe that's running mechanics, whatever that is. But I think what's wrong with today's world is we're taking kids who are already doing too much of the sport specific stuff. And that's a whole topic I could sit here and ramble on, but they're already doing too much of that. If I go be like every other bro on the corner that's selling speed and agility and change of direction and all these different things, I'm essentially trying to pour into a bucket that's already full. So it's not that I'm a strength guy. It's not like, oh, the back squat fixes everything. If that was the case, we'd have 1,000-pound squatters playing in the NFL. But my point is because strength is the most under prioritized element for most kids. You'll have some football programs that obviously prioritize the strength stuff, sometimes maybe too much. But for the general kid, females especially, work with a ton of females as well, strength is the quality that is most undervalued and most underutilized. So again, if performance is what I'm after, I'm I'm not just going to give them more speed and agility because like that's easy and that's what I like. I'm using that strength bucket because I understand that that's the bucket that has the least amount of water in it, and it's tough, right? Because like it'd be so much easier for me to jump into John Wellborn Power Athlete talked about it, battle the bullshit. I could jump right in there. And I know that speed and agility is more palatable. I could reach more people. I could do that. But it's a conflict of internal interest because it's like, am I giving people what's going to line my pocket or am I going to give them what I know they need? And it's tough because from a business perspective, it's like, dude, I'm trying to sell really boring, mundane, hard shit. And my competitors are Icky Shuffle and Xbox. You know what I mean? So it's tough. And I know that I'm limiting myself. But again, if I've learned anything in 13 years of business, it's niche down, niche down, niche down. And by doing things the right way, I'm not going to attract all the people, but I'll attract the right people, right? And fortunately, that sentiment has proven to be true for me.
It's funny that you said the icky shuffle. I didn't touch a weight until I got to college baseball,
Right.
and we had a speed and agility day in the rec center, and it was some trainer that they had, some personal trainer that was like leading the session for us or whatever. And God, I remember doing those ladders and doing the icky shuffle and the 2 feet in and two
Right.
feet out and all that stuff. And they're like, it's gonna make you fast. And I bought into it. I was
Right.
like,
Well,
yeah,
because you don't know.
I feel
Right.
faster. I feel quicker. My feet feel better. But
Right.
we weren't pushing heavy weights and we weren't doing things that made us stronger. But I will say, luckily, I had a roommate that like got me into the training heavier weights and things like that. And about that time is when I kind of got my break into college baseball and got a chance to play, started hitting the ball further, started running faster, started
Right.
having good breaks off the ball in the outfield, so good simplistic training can go a long way, it seems like, especially for
sure.
those that have never had it with like kids. I like that you don't overcomplicate things. I mean, I've read your book. I think your book is awesome for young strength coaches that don't like train with or that do train with kids or young kids.
Right.
Like what kind of do you ever get really outside of what you preach in that book, or do you have some, I know you work with some college athletes, but does their training really change much, or does it need to change much?
Yeah. So, like in that book, just to be honest with you, that's more of like just a general prescription of strength and conditioning that you could definitely use with kids. I've got
Sure.
a local high school that their basketball coach, he uses it exclusively with his kids. Um, so again, that squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, it's obviously, the fundamentals that we've all heard of that I think a lot of programs can base off of. So typically the way that I develop like an athlete program from a youth's perspective is I look at, what do athletes do? They run, they jump, they sprint, they change direction. What do we do to enhance those things? We got to develop stronger muscles so that we can influence those KPIs in a positive way. So honestly, man, like the way that I look at it, it's funny. I can break the program down right now just from a lower body perspective, and then I can go upper body if you want to. You look at it, and it's like we start with an explosive movement. So if that's a lower body day, we're gonna jump. Well, how do we prep for those jumps? Well, I'll sprint them. So it starts right at the top. Sprint, jump. If it's a lower body day and we're doing a max effort, I use the quotations from max because it's really a sub max effort. We're not doing really true maximum effort work with a beginner. But then we'd have our main squat, and then I'd go into a supplemental exercise, which is something that's going to build the main movement, which again for us might be a quarter squat, or that might be some sort of an explosive squat jump or whatever that is. And then from there, it's just the accessories. And again, it's kind of silly, but I believe it to be true, and it's something that a lot of guys, once you get into the weeds of it, will agree with. These kids with such low training ages, you don't have to beat the shit out of them with heavy volume with the barbell stuff. But I train the accessory exercises like bodybuilders. So you'll see, and people will give it shit. 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12. And it's not because like I'm sitting here trying to, over prescribe volume to the kids, but because they're beginners by nature, they need and respond to that volume well. So it's really like, I look at it like this. The front of the workout is athlete. The max effort, and God forbid people are going to shit their pants when I hear it, is power lifter style. It's powerlifting. And then the back end of the workout is bodybuilding. And then I finish with strongman. So it's athlete, power lifter, bodybuilding, strongman. And again, that's where we do like a weighted carry or, what have you. Sometimes we'll do like sandbags over the bar, that type of stuff, gritty type training. But now I'm checking those boxes. Would I prescribe the same exact way to a college or a pro athlete? Maybe it would be a little bit more emphasized on the speed end of the continuum because again, they've already got the relative base of strength. It's like I'm working with a guy now, Slade Bolden. He played receiver at Alabama, national champion, the whole deal. He's in between teams right now. But anyway, with him, and he's an awesome guy, and I'm just communicating with him. He's been exposed to all the training under the sun. And I train him with a similar template as I might give those kids. Obviously, where a kid might be doing a goblet squat, learning the foundation, I'm putting him, we might band or chain the explosive squats or whatever. But again, because his outputs are so high, relatively speaking to the kid, it's almost like I use less volume in the weight room with some of those older or more experienced guys. And then I spend more time focusing on the speed, strength, and strength speed end of the continuum. We have some fun on upper body days. I'll work like a top set of one with him or whatever. But really it's like you can perform less with the more experienced guys because where the kid might need 15, 20 sets to like get that volume fix, so to speak, the older or more experienced guys don't necessarily need it as much in my opinion. But as far as the actual like protocol, I still largely believe in, sprint, jump, do something heavy, do something explosive, do something with a single appendage and carry something. I believe in that.
Yeah. I like your program's very adaptable to like your base program. Like you said, it's just pretty simple in the book, but it gives people direction. And I like that it gives people a chance to be like, okay, so what population of people do I actually have and need to train? And this is kind of the way I need to go. And it's got regressions and progressions all through it. And I think for like young strength coaches, I had a guy intern me with this summer and I was like, hey, you need to read this book because you need to just have a base idea and a good template of like, this is what I need to start with my client and adapt from there. And I think it's a really good your book's a really good foundation for any strength coach out there that's like, just kind of need some ideas to kind of go in the direction of just programming and learning how to program. Because when they get out of school, that's the biggest lacking thing I think that those exercise like science kids have is they don't have any experience on the floor, actually training a real human being. It's all just been hypothetical. So it's a really good book for that.
No, I appreciate it. And it was one of those too that like, trust me, I don't want to sit here and say like I fell to that. I've read every programming model there is, sitting here on my desk, are all the books that everybody reads, and you learn about all the different methods and periodization and all these different things. And I've tried it all from German volume training to, all of Jim Wendler, Joe DeFranco. I've done all of them. And it's funny, like I look at it and it's like these old guys who have skin in the game that have been in here 20, 40, 50 years why is it that their programming is so simple, but the 22-year-old bro has got this like complex, jargon and all this stuff. And it's like, because once, to me, it's funny. Like when you first start in strength and conditioning, you think you know everything. And then after about 5 years, your bullshit meter obviously picks up a little bit to where you start to figure out like, all right, some of this stuff is nonsense. Then once you have 10 years in the game, it's like, not to say that like your early screw ups are not valuable, but you realize like, okay, it is the bread and butter. You know what I mean? It is just that simple stuff. Dan John is a big influence on me as well. And it's like that guy has coached strength and conditioning longer than I've been alive. And if he is simple, who in the hell am I to sit here and try to come with some like complex programming model? And again, it's not to knock the Cal Dietz of the world, that have their triphasic and this and that. But again, for most people, you're going to get much further with simple and consistent than you are, trying to be the most nuanced guy under the sun. And that's who I'm after. Again, from a general population of 14 to 18-year-olds, if I implemented triphasic training with a 15-year-old kid with 9 months of training experience, what are we doing? You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. How many kids do you currently work with in the where you're at currently? And do you have to like turn people away? Do you have to?
So times of the year, right now, this is kind of our slower season just because we've got, football is in season, volleyball is in season, softball is in season, a lot of those sports that we work with. Summers are obviously crazy. But generally it's usually around 100 clients, at any given time. And it's nice because like, obviously you guys know the value of like year-round training, but there are some people that for whatever reason aren't going to buy into it. But again, working with athletes and just really people in general from different backgrounds, right now baseball's in for us because baseball season isn't until the spring here in Atlanta. And then obviously once football season, and winter is actually our busiest time because really during winter the only sports that are wrestling and basketball, so it's kind of ebbs and flows. And that allows us to kind of maintain an organic nature to where during the COVID stuff, we definitely had to turn people away just from a standpoint of like numbers. But what's cool is where my facility is. I don't live there, but I own the property. And then right next to the house is our facility. We're not in a neighborhood or an HOA or anything like that. So basically where I'm going is like, let's say our volume did increase 2x even, I can add more sessions to the schedule as needed, but that being said, one thing I'll never try to be is the low price leader. It's one of those things that I recognize that my gym and gyms like mine aren't going to be for everybody. So it's one of those where I would rather have a close knit, a close knit, smaller number than sit here and be like a lot of these guys who, what I call are volume guys. They sit there and they ask their prices and, it's $100 a month. And well, of course you got 350 kids, you're charging nothing. But then I ask, how much quality training is really taking place when you've got one coach and 62 kids in a session doing knee up, toe up. You know what I mean? There's no coaching there. You're babysitting. So it's like, I want that blend of, a client that's willing to invest in quality. And then on the back end of that, I'm not having to work 100 hours a week. I've been there, done that, and I'm not afraid of that. But as I'm grown in my field and I've got a family, we've got our third child on the way next month or December, I'm not trying to work 80 hours a week. I'd rather work, a smaller number of hours with a smaller number of people who value the service more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Alex and I can appreciate that. That's kind of what we like to talk about. We don't want to train everyone, and we can't train everyone. We want to train the people that are actually truly invested in what you're doing. Can you talk about the girls training type a little bit? I know you and I have had conversations about this, and it doesn't change. I know a lot of people come to me and a lot of parents ask me that question of like, well, how would you train my daughter? How would you train girls differently? And I know that you and I have said we're probably not going to train them any differently. And how important is it to see these young girls coming up in your system and giving them the confidence that they're getting?
Yeah, man, it's huge. It's one of those things that I really believe, especially in female athletics in general, there's no lower hanging fruit than strength training. And the reason is because you think of a sport like softball, or think of a sport like volleyball, soccer, even, where a lot of these, lacrosse is another big one around here that's growing too. It's like again, we could get into the whole like single sport versus multi-sport deal. But again, let's just be honest, whether I like it or not, 85, 90% of these kids are single sport athletes, right? So what are they doing? They're doing an immense amount of their sport. They're playing 12 months a year. If they're seeking training, they're seeking sport specific training with a shooting instructor in lacrosse and all these different things that, again, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because I understand it from a consumer perception perspective. But at the same time, a lot of these girls out there are showing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're playing the same amount. They're seeing the same coaches. They're seeing the same trainers. They're doing these things. Well, if you consistently do the same exact thing that everybody else is doing, obviously genetics play a role, but you're largely going to attain the similar result. Now, if I can get a girl and her family to buy in on the strength training side of things, you can still do your sports specific stuff. You can still practice. You can still do all that. But basically, what we're doing is I use the car analogy a lot, is we're enhancing the motor's output, not just painting the car a different color. And that for females, especially because it's still in 2023, it's obviously growing, which is awesome to see from a female athletics perspective as a whole. But it's one of those things that the vast majority still are not doing it. And if they are, they're not being trained properly. That you get a girl with a large background in sport, and then you take her and you help her get stronger, faster, build more confidence, realize she's not going to get bulky, and then you send her back out on the softball field. What that does between the ears, the neck down stuff is obvious, right? It's a physics equation from the neck down. Like obviously you have more force producing capabilities. You're going to get to second base faster. Like I don't even go that route with it. I look at it from the mental perspective of you're doing something that the majority of others aren't willing to do. And by default, you're going to see a kick from that, and then it's funny. They get to college where it's like, say you play softball or lacrosse, the season's 3 months a year, 4 months a year, but training is 12 months a year. So right now from 10 to 18, we do no training in sport 12 months a year. And then at 18, we do 3 months of sport per year, followed by 12 months a year of training. So it's like, if we can start, oh, I want to be a college athlete, then start acting like it. You know what I mean? Like, then that's what you do when you get into some of these premier programs, because much like your experience, a lot of these girls, especially their first exposure to real strength and conditioning. I'm not talking going and walking on a treadmill and doing dumbbell chest press. Their first exposure to strength and conditioning is an 18-year-old girl walking into her freshman year at insert college. That's their first time. And it's like, holy shit, what if you start at 14? Now your training age is the same as an 18-year-old and your skill level is going to be comparable because you've been doing the same thing forever. So that's really my biggest thing. As far as the changes, there's not really any changes. The one thing that I think the biggest difference between male and females, males know how to strain. They want to strain. Sometimes they don't understand pulling back. So it's like with a lot of males, I have to work on almost slowing them down to focus a little more. What I've learned with the girls is not that they're afraid of work, but it's teaching them how to strain properly. Obviously, we're not going to sit here and compromise technique for an ego PR, but it's like sometimes they lift a weight and they smoke it, and it's like, okay, that's enough. It's like, no, like it's okay for it not to fly off the ground. I'm a big believer in speed work, but also from a max effort work perspective, like that's why I love the trap bar deadlift. You can put a kid in a good position and it's like, you either get it or you don't. And it's like so many times with girls, especially, they'll go to pull it. And if it doesn't come off the ground right now, oh my gosh, I'm done. My defense mechanism, stress, walk away. And I'm like, listen to me. You just hang on to that bar for 2 more seconds and it will go. And to see that shift when they just keep hanging on and leverage the weight off the floor, now you get that into their psyche. And now it's like, okay, now they start to understand that a little bit more versus your stereotypical toning with 10-pound dumbbells. That's still what they think it should be like. But once you teach them, it's not that, golly, I've got some girls that are absolute monsters. I had 2 girls put 405 on their back this week. And it's like, one of them got it, one of them missed the lockout. But anyway, it's like to think about putting 405 pounds on the back of a teenage female. Like, I don't give a shit if you just walk it out and hold it, to have that much strength in your trunk and your, like, that's like that would crush grown men. What is that going to do with a girl that goes out on a soccer field knowing that there's girls out there that couldn't goblet squat 35 pounds? You know what I'm saying? So it builds the mental side of it as much as the physical side.
When I know you've worked with a couple college athletes, girls athletes, and when you send them off to their college and then they come back, what's their experience like, and like how are they? What's comparable to what they do, and are they walking into situations of good strength and conditioning, or are some of
Yeah,
them not so
that's
good?
that's a great question. So, like, probably the most gifted athlete I've ever worked with is a girl named Hal Hirschfeld. She plays at Clemson. She'll be a draft pick this year. All ACC, the whole deal. And I believe Clemson's Olympic sports department is one of the best in the country. It's one of those where they take a lot of pride in the Olympic side of things. So when Hal got there, it was very good for her because, yes, there may have been some difference between, what she might be doing with me in a private setting versus there in a collegiate setting. But it was awesome for her. And she went in and she was able to thrive. She's one of the strongest girls in the team, beats the conditioning test every year, was a strength and conditioning All-American this past year, and it has nothing to do with me. It's just she's a one percenter. But then to the other side of that equation, and again, I don't really care about the level of sport, so I don't get into this like D1 Power Five bullshit, none of that. But I'll have kids, girls too, that go to a college, and it might be a group of five school, or it might be a FCS school, an NAIA school. And it's like, still, there's so much room that we need to make up. And I don't want to speak for everyone because there's obviously good and bad wherever you look, but it's still like we do CrossFit and we do like this crazy, like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 set and rep scheme. There's still a lot of the garbage out there. But again, it's not these like coaches' fault or anything like that, because if you look at an under-resourced school, right, that isn't investing in strength and
Right.
conditioning, you're going to get the local CrossFit boxes WOD to be your workout of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas a school like Clemson, Texas, Notre Dame, they're going to have the coin to be able to invest in that. So
It's like
yeah,
it seems like programs know that they need to be doing something, but they don't have enough money to actually invest in someone that can give them the results that they need.
right,
And so that's kind of the biggest knockoff you see from like the D1 and then everything else kind of
exactly,
below. But
right, right.
it's do they come back in worse shape to you, or do you still? I
You
mean,
know,
Hal obviously seems to be in a pretty good situation, but some of these others that go to these some just a little bit lower like
yeah,
NAI schools, do they come back in worse
yeah.
shape?
And it's tough too, because again, let's just say, I've got baseball guys, which is a large demographic that we have that might be playing at small schools. They're coming to me right as their season is ending. So naturally they're not going to be as strong or in the best shape, after you've had a 4 month long season. But again, I've always said that, strength and conditioning, as much as it's important to have good quality coaches, it's a personal discipline. And again, the kid that takes pride in even the worst program is going to come back in better shape than the guy that has access to the best program but half-asses it. You know what I mean? So I just believe it is a personal responsibility, to where, like, I even get some guys, like, they send me the program that they're doing at school, and it might be twice a week during the season, and they want to do an extra day on their own. I'll have them go do some of the stuff that we might be doing from a dynamic effort perspective, or working on some of the smaller muscle groups and things like that. So it's hard. I would definitely say yes, but again, I wouldn't necessarily throw any strength and conditioning program under the bus, because at the end of the day, too, you look at a college football player, for example, he's going to look a hell of a lot better shape wise June 15th than he is December 15th. And that goes from the pinnacle of strength and conditioning, just strictly from a standpoint of the wear and tear of a 3 month, 4 month long season.
And that's so I think that's why it's so important to continue training year round and in season and things like that. I know you
All
and I
right.
talked about it, and I asked you kind of what you do in season with your high school athletes, your younger athletes, but
Right.
kind of what do you do for people that are, you say it's important to train year round. I believe that. So what do you do? Do you taper anything? Do you change anything? I kind of know the answer because I've had that conversation with you,
Right.
but what do you
Right.
do for your athletes in season?
So there's not much difference, and I've got some kids that, again, that have been training with me for 8 years by the time I get to their senior year in high school. We had a kid, hell, it was Monday, put 525 on his back and it looked like speed work. A kid like that, who again are few and far between, he doesn't like it, but I'm going to put deload weeks on that kid's, and I'm going to adjust what we're doing with him. And it's not because care about him more than the other person, or because he deserves some specialized treatment. It has nothing to do with that, because his outputs are so high. he's going to require a little bit more recovery than a kid who might be the same age but have a lower training age, who I need to obviously put on them. It's one of those things that I always look at the situation. If I've had a kid that's been training consistently, I do very little deloading, I do very little adjustment in their programming. Why? Because their body is so trained that the stimulus that's going to make them sore or tired is not going to be strength training. It's going to be when we add baseball back into that season. It's always like the first 2 weeks of the season. Ray, I don't want to lift because I don't want to be sore for baseball. And you know what I tell them? I say, fine, don't do anything for the first 2 weeks. You can take the time, blah, blah, blah. But then to educate them, it's not the strength and conditioning that's making you sore, right? It's the new stimulus that you're adding to the strength and conditioning. Now, hey, baseball needs to take precedence over strength and conditioning during the baseball season. But at the same time, we can't sit here and point the finger at back squats, because if the back squats were the problem, how come for the last 26 weeks in a row, you never got sore from the back squats, but on week 27, you think it's the squats that got you? So again, they don't understand it. The parents sometimes, and rightfully so, like I get it. You don't want to be sore for tryouts or whatever. So if they're going to come in and train, even though I know it wouldn't be my fault per se, I'll back them off a little bit just so they don't get that like placebo effect of, well, was it the lunges I did? Or what I'll do, and I don't mind doing this at all, I still stick to the big guns where I'll still jump them, I'll still sprint them intermittently, and I'll do a heavy squat or heavy deadlift, low volume. And then what you do, man, is you bake out some of the 4x8 Bulgarian split squats. Instead, we'll do 2 sets of 8 step ups with no weight. So you still get a single leg explosive movement. But as you guys know, if you've stayed away from Bulgarian split squats or lunges for 6 weeks, your ass is going to be sore the next time you do them. You know what I mean? So I'll
Never
stay away
fails.
from that a little bit. But again, I was telling a kid yesterday, 525 for a set of one. Ray, I'm going to be so sore tomorrow. He comes in the next day, he's ready to fist fight a bear. It felt perfect. And that's a kid that's putting some serious poundage on his back. Is the kid who's doing 225 for 3 going to need some extensive in-season program? Hell no.
Let them go. Just let them go.
Yeah,
They're
you gotta do.
adaptable. They're kids. They're adaptable. They'll make it.
They will. And if they didn't, I would adjust it. But again, 13 years of collecting data on these kids, and I've never seen somebody that's got a beginner or intermediate level of training exposure need some highly nuanced program playing, a high school sport.
Right. What about your training? How long? I mean, I know you said you started from a pretty young age. Kind of talk about how your training has developed over the years and kind of how it's led to the coach that you've become. But what's changed also as you've started to get into a little bit longer of this? The longer that you go into this, what's changed actually?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I started at 12 years old, and I was just a serial trainee. It was something that I had an addiction to, and it was bad. I wouldn't hang out with friends if it interfered with workouts or meal timing or anything like that. Like, I was very, very hardcore. Obviously, initially, I was into the bodybuilding type things. You see the magazines and you see all this stuff. Wanting to be a jacked kid. I was always one of the guys that was, walking around with the gallon jug, doing all that. And then after I kind of went out of that get huge phase, I really went into like a strength phase, which is actually after my playing days, which was around, 18 years old. Had some opportunities to play college athletics, but I was so obsessed with the strength and conditioning side of things that I enjoyed the act of preparing more than I did playing the actual sport. And that's when I got into the strength thing, which I think was an awesome background for me because, again, I never trained like a power lifter, in high school. It was more of the 4 sets of 10 bodybuilding type bullshit. But, still at 18 years old, repping 405 in the bench press, pulling 600 pounds off the ground as a guy that never did any strength training. It was all bodybuilding. I had a very good platform to continue to get stronger. So I went from this like bulking, I weigh 200 pounds now. I used to be 250 pounds. Anyway, I got out of that phase, went the strength training route really from like 18 to 23. And that's where I kind of fell in love with like the performance side of things and the West Side Barbell and all this stuff. But then, like they always tell you, like you're going to hit a breaking point one day. I didn't believe it at the time, but then I started walking around with a gimpy hip. I ripped the pec off the bone, the whole thing. And it was one of those that, I don't regret it because it allows me to have more perspective. I understand why it happened. I was putting too much demand on my body, didn't give myself enough time off, et cetera, et cetera. But how I've been able to adapt my training at 33 years old has been extremely beneficial from my past experiences from injuring myself and getting burnt out on training, and all that stuff, all the stuff that I make fun of, back in the day, kettlebells and this and that is all soft and barbell or everything. Yeah. Well, here's the guy that's living with a 53-pound kettlebell in his hands every day. You learn and you mature because of the experiences. So, where my goals went from getting jacked to being extremely strong are now to, again, feel good. You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, that's what training is. It was like I went through a phase in my life where I was in so much pain from training. Here I am before training session. It's embarrassing to admit that I'm sipping Jim Beam trying to numb this pain for an intermittent amount of time so I can go squat, and here I am. Well, this is just what you got to do if you want to be a tough guy. Just a bunch of bullshit, right? But it's how I learned, right? And eventually, like, I got to a point where, like, I couldn't even fake it, right? I put a bar on my back and I was in so much pain. There was nothing I can do. I picked up a book by Pavel, Simple and Sinister, which is just a very basic kettlebell swing, Turkish get up. And I thought this was the damn softest nonsense in the entire world. I could knock the workout out in 30 minutes. But I promised myself I had no other choice. I was at my wit's end. I was like, I'm going to turn the light off and be done. And I'd go back in there and I'd pump out curls or some stupid shit. And then I was like, no, I'm going to buy into this. And then after 6 weeks of that, of truly buying in and getting away from Ray Zingler, it was like, holy shit, I found myself, right? Like I felt good again. And I was like, man, maybe this training thing doesn't have to be this tough guy nonsense. And then I was still looking for my fix. I knew with a torn pec, rotator issues here, hip, this, I'm not a numbers guy at all anymore. I don't care to go 400 or 200. If the weights didn't have numbers on them, I wouldn't care. I'd just lift them until it felt good. But anyway, where I found that I could cut my teeth was in the conditioning side of things. And that's why in my book, I talk a lot on the conditioning side. I get my strain from pushing the prowler, from pulling a sled, from hitting the stairs, those things that are a little bit more forgiving than putting 500 pounds axial loading on your back. I'll do my belt squats and all the stuff that feels good. And then when I want to push the envelope, I push it in an area that's arguably healthier, right? From a cardiovascular standpoint, that is allowing me to get that, like, that feeling that 500 pounds on the barbell used to give me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you ever get on the platform and compete, or did you try to, or is that not something that you wanted to do?
I went to a bodybuilding show at 19 years old, man. And I used to be obsessed with bodybuilding. I was big, Dorian Yates, those guys. I was huge into Branch Warren. I loved the physique. I loved all that. Then I saw a bunch of dudes walking around in oil, smelling like a horse's ass, standing on a stage, letting other guys judge them. And I was like, man, I don't know that this is for me. and then, and then the powerlifting side of things, it's like, I appreciate the sport and I respect the sport, but this whole love of training has always stemmed between me and the bar. And it's not that I'm afraid of competition, but all the training I've ever done in my life has been Ray Zingler versus Ray Zingler, whether that's been the best workout of my life or the worst one, whether that's been no pain or all the pain in the world. I've always done this for me. Ray personally didn't need the subjective. I shouldn't even say subjective, because in powerlifting, it's obviously 500 pounds is more than 400 pounds. I didn't need to beat you to justify what I was doing. So all of my training has remained in-house, because it's almost like it's a personal affinity on a level that I recognize is going to be a little bit higher than your average Joe. But, like, I don't train for muscles. I don't train for like 405. I don't train for like the mental health, but I appreciate those things. But it's like it'd be hard to explain to you the amount of love I have for the concept of physical training. And it goes well beyond powerlifting, bodybuilding, or the mental health benefits. It's, again, you've done it so long every day. I've been doing this for 20 plus years on a weekly basis. You grow into, discipline is one thing, right? But it's above, like, the idea of, like, not like that doesn't even resonate. Take a week off. Like, what the fuck do you mean take a week off? Like, I would rather die. Right. And that sounds crazy. And,
I don't know. That sounds about right.
But that's how it is. Now, currently speaking, I'm paying for that right now. I've got a rib issue that I'm dealing with. It's contributing some back pain, and I'm in and out of the chiros and PTs and getting that figured out. But it's funny, man, not single one of them has said stop training. Obviously, I'm adjusting my modality right now while I work through this little hiccup. But, like, not train, like I put me under, man. Like I don't want nothing to do with that, you know? So that's just,
I thought I
why.
was talking. I thought I was talking to Alex there for a second. I think that's when I talk to Alex. That's a lot. I get that sentiment. That's where he comes from as well. And a lot of people that we talk to, I feel like that's their sentiment too. It's there's ways to continue doing this that you don't understand. You have to fall in love with the process. He's trying to teach this to me right now, actually,
Right.
because
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
pretty new to this. I'm pretty new into the game, and
Right. Which is okay.
I still love the number thing, and I have to get the number thing out of my head. Obviously, I had a setback too a couple months ago
Right.
because of trying to chase the number thing,
Right.
and it's kind of humbled me in a way to where I had to step back and look like, okay, what do I actually want to get out of this daily, and why do I even do this in the first place? Like, what is my process? Why do I actually love this stuff? You know, like,
Right.
and am I willing to do the stuff that's going to get me back to where I need to be, or am I just really chasing numbers? So
Right.
it's
Right.
good that you said that, because I recognize those same things in my training right now too.
Right. And it's a natural evolution, man. You know, like there was times, you know, there was a day, oh shit, I was probably 22 years old. You know, I wanted to deadlift 550 and I tried it that morning 3 times and I didn't get it, you know, and it was like one of those things. I was frustrated as hell. You know, it was one of those things talking and reading the magazines. Your central nervous system, you know, you need 7 days minimum to recover from a max effort load like that. Dude, you couldn't convince me that I needed 7 days to get this deadlift. So again, later that night, I come back down there. I got damn Travis Tritt cranking on the radio, shirt off, guzzling damn pre-workout, Jim Beam, the whole thing, punching myself in the face. I'm bleeding like crazy, and I get the weight right, and I'm thinking like, holy shit, you know, I'm this big now for 3 weeks. I can't even sit my ass up out of bed. And I'm thinking to myself like, I'm sitting in my underwear in my basement, just pulled 550. That was sweet for 5 seconds. Nobody on earth cares, right? Like it doesn't matter. And here I am paying for that. But again, at that time, I know now it's funny. Like should I go 315? My max is 500. Should I go 315 or 275? And then I go 260 and walk away, you know, but my mindset and my perspective has shifted so much that at that time, you couldn't have convinced me that. Now I look at it, and the biggest transition in my training has gone from, you know, optimal to I want to do it every day. I want to do it every single day. So I know that if in order for me, if frequency is going to be a major, you know, input in my training, I've got to be JV enough every day. So that way I can prepare for tomorrow. And I've just learned for myself. And again, it's not to say that it's for everybody. A little bit done every day is better for me mentally and physically than 4 days a week of busting ass. You know what I'm saying? Because on those days off, I'm going to be wanting to do something anyway, knowing that I don't need to. So instead, I program 7 days a week. But again, it allows each workout for me personally. And I'm not saying everybody has to do this, but each of my workouts can be fairly benign because I'm going to touch that stimulus again tomorrow, and then three tomorrows from tomorrow. And then if I do this shit right, I can do this 17 years from now. And that's ultimately because training is such a passion of mine. Like again, I'm telling you guys could come into my weight room right now and you could strip all the numbers off the weight plates. I don't even need to see them. I'll shut my eyes and I'll just pick up whatever feels enough. Because at the end of the day, all I'm doing right now is I'm chasing work. I'm obsessed with work. I love to put forth effort and I love to work. So this exercise, that weight, this person, I don't give a shit. I just want to work and I want to feel the strain. Now that strain in 2023 is different than it was in 2010. But at the same time, I know that this is therapy in a much deeper sense than what it might be for most people in a way. And I want to do this shit forever. So now what is the orthopedic cost of me not adjusting myself right now? Maybe I could train a little bit more intense at 33 years old. But if I want to be doing the shit at 77, I got to make calculated decisions right now. So again, the long game, blah, blah, blah. I'm truly trying to play the long game.
I always think it's funny. The comments, if you do have, like, if you're doing like a trap bar lift or something and you've got some plates on there and people will be like, load it up, Ray. Come on, Ray. Like, let's go, Ray. Let's see
Right.
what you still got in the tank, Ray. But you stay very true to who you are. And I have a lot of respect for that. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'll never. And again, it's one of those things that, again, and especially with social media, right? Like you'll have some of the freaks on there. Jamal Browner is a guy that I know. He was from the town that I'm and world deadlift record holder. Like people are going to look at that, right? And they're going to do that. But again, who I'm trying to target on social media is just it's boring as shit, right? It's not complex, but it's like if I can lead by example, and I'm not trying to win the trap bar deadlift basement competition. And if Jimmy over there sees me pull 225 or 275, is he thinking about that 3 weeks from now? No. But if this guy consumes my content and he sees that guy being true to himself day in and day out, week after week out, training with sub maximal loads, look at what that guy's doing. He's doing it, versus a lot of power lifters, they may pull 900 pounds off the ground, but the amount of 900-pound power lifters at 33 years old, and there's some that are still training at 55 years old are few and far between. You know what I mean? So it's almost like I'm willing to like let mouth breather 87 think I'm soft, if that's going to help me to train 25 years from now.
Mouth breather. You are a man of many words, and
I'm a psycho, man. I'm a weird dude. I really am.
The capacity you have for what you do in writing too, and all the posts you make, and the amount of work you put on. So it helps that you have such awesome kids that are bought into what you're doing. But talk a little bit about the business side of things, as far as how much content you put in for social media, and how much does that take away from your time, and how much do you invest in that? It seems like you put a lot of thought into what you do on the social media side as well.
Yeah, man, I treat it like a full-time job. And, it's one of those things that I know that I don't have to do, just because, again, I recognize the majority of my work is going to fall on deaf ears, because at the end of the day, most people aren't in it to be educated. They're in it to see, swimsuit pics and all the bullshit on social media. But again, I live my life by a principle, and it's something I picked up from Dan John. He said, if it's important, do it every day. And it really, hit hard with me, where I was like, we always have this stuff in training where we have this like leeway to where it's like we allow for, a little bit of, oh, well, if we miss it today, we'll just do it, pick it back up tomorrow. And that's fine. And that's great advice. It really is. But then I just asked myself several years ago, I was like, what if I just don't miss? Like, what if I just do it every fucking day? Of course, there's going to be days where it's less convenient and I'm busy, but like, what if I just choose to do it anyway? It's like training. I said to myself, Ray Zingler is a guy that's going to train 7 days a week. So I'm going to defend my actions. Today, I may not have the best workout of my life, but can I go pull a sled for 10 minutes? Like, I don't care if I'm feeling like shit, like I can go do that. Right. So it's the same thing with the social media stuff. It's one of those things that like, it almost might be unrealistic to be able to make a post and write a blog every single day. Like that sounds crazy. Well, I'm dumb enough to know, like, what if I just do it? Right. What if I just act on it? So it's one of those, I've built that into my psyche, that it's just every single day I'm going to do that. It's part of my morning. I get up, I write, a lot of it is, again, I'm speaking. A lot of people might think that I'm attacking somebody or this or that. And I'm really not. The majority of my writing is speaking to myself. So a lot of the writing, just to be honest with you, is for me. And if there's people that can leverage benefit from that, it's going to be a small demographic, right? But that's going to be the demographic that I'm after. And that's who, I'm selling programming to guys on different continents. You know what I mean? There was a guy in Europe that I'm some hillbilly in a basement, and some guy's buying my work in London. Like, what the hell is going on? I'm going to go after that stuff. And again, I'm willing to get into the weeds and live the code every single day. If that affects one person, man, who's to say who that person may have a bigger reach than I am 10 years from now. And if my influence on their life can reign true right now, I'm going to put the time in to do it. And then two, one of the things, obviously a family man, my kids, I don't know if they'll ever read my blog post, but one thing, I know as they get older, they're going to see how dumb their dad really is. But if they do a little bit of digging, dad always talked about this consistency thing. You can go on, it's a Substack thing. I have a blog, but I ain't missed a day. You know what I mean? And it's not like, I'm the big tough guy. You're not going to do it. I will. It has everything to do with, this is who I say I want to be. And there's a book called Atomic Habits. I'm not sure if you guys have read it, but it's basically, the premise of it is each and every little thing you do is a vote for the person who you do or don't want to become. And if I want to be a writer, if I want to be a better coach, if I want to be a better trainee, I look at it in the context of a wheel. And the more times I spin that wheel, right, the more opportunities I earn to win. If you spin it 3 times and I spin it 7, you might be better at your 3, but by sheer statistics, I've got a better shot, right? So it's one of those things that, and I talk to people all the time. Let's say I post 365 days a year and only 15 of those 365 hit. What if I posted 6 times? I just won. The majority of my stuff can be bad, but by doing it and trying and erring and learning, I'm generating the more chances to be successful. So that's how I view it. But yeah, man, it takes, oh hell, I probably spend an hour a day on generating social media content. And obviously I've gotten a lot better at it, over the years with captions and because I've done it so long. I mean, if you were to, my social media is I'm not a social media guru by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there's like 5,000 plus posts on there. I've averaged 2.5 posts a day, every day for like the last 9 years without missing a day. You know what I mean? And it's only because I believe in it that much. That's the other side of it too. Is like, let's say you think Ray Zingler's full of shit. You can't stand him and the guy's annoying and he posts so much. The one thing nobody is ever allowed to say about me, they can say what they want and make this up or assume that. Nobody can say Ray Zingler doesn't give a shit. They don't have to agree. They don't have to like it, but there's nobody, you can't say that I don't care. If I didn't care, would I put that much effort into? I don't have 2 million followers. I think there's like 8,000. Dude, I'm a serial freaking strength coach, youth athletic performance guy. And I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. So again, like it, love it, hate it. Nobody can say that guy doesn't care.
Yeah, I'm super impressed because I'm just like, man, I know the capacity it takes to sit down and just write a Substack and not just believe that, oh my Lord, this is just absolute garbage what I wrote. So
right.
for you to do that every day and to continue to want to do that and stay true to who you are, that's kudos to you because that's so tough.
It's challenging, man. And it's funny. The majority of the commenting from people is going to be people who disagree with you. They'll consume it every day, right? They'll read it. They'll subscribe to the email list or whatever. But the second you say something that rubs them the wrong way, I'll get a DM and it's like, you don't understand sport performance. And like, you're supposed to do 10,000 hours to be elite, according to Malcolm Gladwell. And then my argument to this guy, this was months ago. If 10,000 hours was the rule to become elite in anything, and the majority of youth athletes have 10,000 hours by the time they're 16 years old because they're playing year round for 10 years, then how come not every kid is elite? And then I'm unfollowing your page. Like, thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for unfollowing my page.
There's the door. I mean? Like, there's the door.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, I just said something that you might have agreed with 6 months ago. You read it and you saw it. You're not engaging with it. You're engaging with the stuff that you misinterpreted.
It's
fine.
That's hilarious. I have a group chat for my gym just to send out announcements and just to get information out and stuff. And I'll post things that I think are informative in there that'll help people. I post a lot of your stuff, and a lot of the stuff that I post is some of the stuff that you're eating stuff. I think you had the one talking about the rotisserie chicken and the rice, and I've got people in there that say they're hard gainers and they can't gain and gain and gain. And I posted in there, it sparked controversy, and people were like taking shots at me about something that I posted. I'm just like, hey, go take it up with Ray.
Yeah,
like he's the one that said it, but it's good content for sure. I love it.
Well, I appreciate it. You're gonna strike the right people, though. You know what I mean? And it's like, obviously with the rotisserie chicken thing, you're gonna get the nutritionist that says like, "Oh my God, the sodium," and like I understand. Like I'm not encouraging a 58-year-old man to eat a rotisserie chicken every day, but a cross country runner who you can see his rib cage, like he's probably gonna be okay for the most part at a young age to eat that way. Because I was a hard gainer too, and then drinking protein shakes while I'm on the toilet all of a sudden taught me I wasn't a hard gainer anymore. You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, it's not, you're not a hard gainer. You're not a good eater, and that's the thing that now, hey, am I eating the same way at 33 as I was at 17? Of course not. So that's the other thing too, is like people don't necessarily take it in context. Like I'm not saying ice cream should be a staple of every single human being's diet. But if your kid's practicing 3 hours a day and is 25 pounds underweight, like he can have a scoop, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be okay, so.
Is that one of the hardest messages to relay to all your parents, is the nutrition side of things, or how much do you take a role in that and educating the people that come to you?
So again, I'm one of those where I live off of principle. And what I mean by that is I'm sitting here, people ask, will you write me a diet plan? Will you write me a diet plan? Like, I eat deer meat and like I got a half a cow in my freezer right now. Like I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that you have to eat exactly what I eat. So I go more off of principle of obviously like your protein, carb, vegetable. Pick the ones that you like. But yeah, and it's one of those things that obviously it's super challenging because sometimes the parents don't even know, and it's like they don't want to eat breakfast, right? The school lunch, even if it's good, there's not enough volume of it there. Then they're eating the chips, and then they're eating dinner at 9:45 at night after practice, and they're so tired they're not hungry, right? Because you had 3 hours of practice, you were sweating, whatever, I'll just skip eating. So that is the biggest challenge. But it's like, it's funny, once I get those guys to like break through that, they see like, hey, you can get results eating Skittles. Like you just can when you're a beginner. Like that doesn't really matter. You're not going to gain a ton of weight, like be huge, but like you'll get stronger eating Skittles and Twizzlers. But you get a kid that like starts like doing his Greek yogurt and granola in the morning with his protein shake, and he's having turkey and rice at lunch and eating a big steak for dinner. Those are the guys that get the most out of the program. And then another issue we deal with, which I'm sure you guys have probably seen as well, every kid, unfortunately, these days, I don't say every kid, I don't want to speak blanketly, but they got ADD and they're taking some medications, and the medications are going to suppress the appetite and all this stuff. So it's a real challenge. And I'm not saying there's some people that out there that shouldn't be taking the ADD medications. I understand that it's extremely valuable for some people. But you take a kid who doesn't have a big appetite to begin with, you suppress his appetite with a medication that he does or does not need. And then now we've got 5 hours a day via activity with 2 practices and a workout. Like it's like, if you eat like a normal human, 3 good quality meals a day with 2, you're still going to lose weight. Like it's an issue, so.
I don't think the kids understand, and parents even understand how lacking their caloric intake is with the amount of work that they're doing, with the school that they're going through, the lack of nutrition that they're getting at school. Then they go to, like you said, they go to the practices for 2.5 hours. Then they might come to train with you for an hour. So it's crazy when you start showing people these calorie numbers and what they should actually be eating for performance. And they're just like, there's no way I can get to that. I'm like, well, you can. You just have to want to do it.
It's a job, man. And that was the thing when I was growing. I went crazy. I would have a protein shake every hour on the hour. I was eating 5 double stacks from Wendy's every day, pizza, the whole thing. And I gained a lot of weight from putting a shit ton of effort into it. It wasn't the cleanest weight or whatever, but the joke I'm making is I went and I ate like a normal human for a week. Okay. Just have your breakfast, lunch, dinner, a little snack. And I lost 23 pounds in 7 days just from eating like a normal human. So what I learned, and again, it wasn't a long-term approach. I knew I was going to have a ceiling of, being 250 pounds as a healthy guy forever wasn't my objective. But when I was chasing some strength numbers, I knew mass moves mass. So I was trying to gain the weight intermittently, but it was like, dude, I don't even like food. My jaws hurt from having to chew like that. All that stuff is so real. And then we get a kid that eats 4 slices of pizza and says he eats so much. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell? No, you don't. So,
yeah, that's, oh man, some of these kids that come to you and tell you like what they're eating on a daily basis, you're just like, I'll pray that you can get through your day. And then they're like, I'm tired, I'm lethargic. I'm like, well, there's probably a reason for that.
Right,
but
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's just it takes time. Obviously some get it earlier than others, but obviously it's the buy-in starts at home with the parents taking, a vested interest in it. But again, I respect them too. You got 4 kids, 3 kids, one's at dance, the other's at soccer, grab Chick-fil-A. It's a crazy time of life to where it's like, at the end of the day, I think the nutrition is critical, but I would rather see a kid with a subpar diet still bust his ass training and doing the things that he needs to than sit here and say, oh, let's stay away from the weight room because I don't have the, requisite calories to defend the strength and conditioning training. No,
right.
Train and eat a cheeseburger and find a way.
Train and eat a cheeseburger. That needs to be a t-shirt. You need to start selling those, Ray.
It works. It works well.
I have noticed on social media it seems like your Zingler Fitness page, you guys have been putting out a little bit more content on that and kind of posting more on that and trying to reach more adults. Is that something you're just as passionate about when it comes to adult fitness health? Or
so I'm the youth guy. I think the biggest difference you can make, in a kid's life is with, at a young age. And it's one of those things that, as I've learned in business, when I started out, I was a solopreneur, man. I was trying to do everything myself. That's the number one piece of advice. If I could go back and do anything, it would be to build a team around me earlier than I did. So as much as I am passionate about the adult fitness stuff, I think at the end of the day, I make the very real joke, but like when an adult invests in personal health and fitness, what they're doing is they're purchasing years of their life is what it is. So it's obviously very important to me. My wife, Courtney, and I've got a great coach, Evan Strader is his name. They kind of run the adult fitness side. I'm very much have a pulse on it and I'm very much into it. But that is a sect of the business that, again, I try to delegate a little bit, not because I don't care, right? But it's like, how many hats can you wear? I've got, again, my third child on the way and this and that. So again, I want to put people inside of our doors that want to make the decision to do difficult things to reap the benefits of it, whether they're 18 or 80. But personally speaking, as far as like the actual implementation of the adult stuff, I do some, but that's really my wife and Evan who kind of front that end of it.
Yeah, that's delegating our duties is never fun sometimes. Feels like we want to
Yeah,
have all the control in a business, but
right.
as I'm early on into this and I'm always looking for ways to try to manage my time better or make more time for this now, especially I've got a 4-month old now. So I know
Oh, wow.
I
Awesome.
I totally get how the time thing can come into play is delegating your duties. Speaking of your kids, everyone always loves to keep up with on social media. It seems like your son's training and
Oh,
how
yeah.
some of the stuff that you guys do, which I think it's awesome. I send those posts to my wife all the time, and I'm like, this is it. This is so
Right.
cool. Like,
No, I love it.
how is that being dad and having fun doing that? Is that not one of the best things that you could possibly do in your day?
Oh, it's awesome, man. We do it every day. And it's funny, man. People are like, oh, they're raised trying to make this kid into a machine and this and that. He wants him to be a pro athlete. I'm like, dude, if my kid grows up and he's respectful and loves the Lord, he can play the cello. Like, I don't care about any of that. I
We
really don't.
we say the
But
same things, yeah, all the
but
time.
yeah, it's funny. It's like the more you're involved in like the youth sport world, you
Oh man,
literally know how broken it is, and it's like, I've got some kids that I train that they're in the band, and oh, they're band kids, and dude, they don't have any of the toxicity. They're playing their instrument, they're learning a discipline. These kids bust their ass practicing ADA. It's like what we think football guys are better people than kids in the band. It's a bunch of nonsense. But anyway, not to go down a rabbit hole. When I first started with him, I started before he could even walk. He was probably 4. When he first started rolling over, I would just do basic proprioception work with him where I'd take him outside, get him shoes off, and I'd lay him in the grass and I'd have him roll over. I'd set him on his side, roll over just to learn, like bodily awareness and whatnot. And then, I do a lot of personalized weighted carries for myself outside. We raise a bunch of dogs as well. So I've always got dog kennels and pins all over the place. And I was carrying my weights and I'd set them down. And then had some of those like small brick pavers out in the yard. And one day, the day Max started walking, he's picking up a brick paver and he's going to stack it on this old dog kennel. Then he'd walk back, pick up another brick paver and set it down. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like there was no like, hey, pick this up and do it. He started doing it on his own. And then it was like, well, if I'm going to be out here leading by example, I really don't care if he takes to it at a year old. But it was like every day that became part of like what he was doing. Again, whether it was 2 bricks or 5 bricks, it was 5 minutes of fun with his dad. And then now kind of that like product of your environment. I don't want to come off as like my kid is this like Tarzan savage who never like has a iPad in his hands or anything like that. He's very much a normal kid, but like physical training is going to be a major part of his life. That's just what like that's I'm going to place as much emphasis on physical education as I will our current, schooling education. People like we undervalue physical education. Then we send them into a school hall to learn for 8 hours a day. They come out with very little practical skill, not knowing how to balance a checkbook or how to acquire a mortgage. I'm not undervaluing math and science and history or anything like that. But I think the model that we use is broken. And for better or for worse, I'm going to prioritize physical education and real world education as much as I will, K through 12 schooling with my children. That's just what I'm going to do. And hey, he's in school now. He's in preschool. He goes and he learns and he does his letters. So I'm not just like this nomad that doesn't believe in education. But every day we're gonna do something physical, whether that's doing little hurdle hops, whether that's catching a ball, whether that's carrying a weight. And it's funny. I don't. There's times in like he'll come down right now. Dad, can we get our workout in? Buddy, like we'll do it here in a little. No, Dad, like let's get it right now. And I'm like, so it's not me like get down here or you're punished. It's he wants to do it. It's part of his. It's like brushing your teeth. And this is the argument I make for people with training. You brush your teeth every day because you want to, or there's adverse consequences if you don't. There's adverse consequences if you don't. Well, that's how I want you to view training. It doesn't have to be some like stage 10 incredible workout every day. Make it just like brushing your teeth. And for a 4-year-old boy to start to understand this concept, not that I'm going to get any pushback later in life. Of course I will. But right now, washing his teeth or brushing his teeth, washing his hands and working, it's all part of the process of what's required for us to get through our day. Like that's just what we do.
I think that's super. Like my dad was a mechanic and obviously knew nothing about the training world. Like I've said this before on other podcasts, like had some weights in the basement. It was like, hey, just go do XYZ down there in the basement. Right. Maybe you'll get better. But that's what I'm really looking forward to as being a dad is just my daughter seeing me in that environment and seeing me go through that process every day and seeing that it is important that I do go through this work, that I do push myself, that I do hard things and making that a part of her routine as well as she starts to get older. There's such tremendous value in that. It'll only serve them better later in life. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would, as early as you can, get her around you, just seeing it. Cause again, that's how I started. I had one of those little playpens and it was, he was very young sitting there in a playpen. He wasn't really paying attention to me working it, but it was being in that environment, and then one day I look over and he's sitting there, he's crawling out of this little pin that I had set up for him, slamming on the ground, gets up, grabs a band and he's just pulling a band. So again, they see it. And I think the earlier you can expose him to that, the better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's kind of your, what's your next steps? What do you envision Zingler Strength becoming? I mean, you're obviously very content with where you are, but I know just from listening to you talk, you always have something that you're looking forward to in the future. So what's kind of next for you, Ray?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm at a very interesting stage of life, obviously, with very young kids. So obviously my family will always be my main priority. I worked my face off from 20 to 30 years old. Really, I went insane, 70, 80 hours, the whole thing. And I'm not looking for the applause or badge of honor. When I say that, I'm strictly making the point that I really tried my ass off to build the business when I knew I had the time, so that at this stage in my career, at the end of the day, a lot of people view wealth in the context of, make more, right? Make more, build, grow, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, for most consumers, when you make more, you end up spending more. And I view wealth a little bit differently, more or less in the context of having ownership of my time and being able to do what I want with my time. So right now, especially as the kids are young and knowing that I'm never going to get this time back, it's not to say that I'm not trying to grow in my business. I'm working at it every single day to grow in my business. But it's also, and again, I hope this doesn't sound like I'm getting lazy or anything, but it's being able to enjoy the fruits of your labor a little bit, knowing that I busted it for the first 10 years, that I can not take some time off. That would kill me in and of itself, but ensure that I spend a lot of present time with my family would be number one. Number two, I'm working on another book project right now, which is going to be a bit more of it's another training book, but it's geared more towards the youth athlete demographic versus my first book, which is just a general physical preparation type book. And then from there, man, I'm always looking at better ways to serve our clientele. You obviously have to be up to date with what's going on and what are the current perceptions and what is youth sport, what direction are we going? So you're staying on the cusp with all that. But I'm a guy who, again, believes in obviously the simple things. We have a model that works. Now, instead of sitting here thinking that I got to do this next thing or jump to this other thing, it's more of a refinement of my current model that will allow me to have deep relationships with these kids and these families so that I can better serve them, while at the same time having this crazy word I didn't know anything about starting out, but balance, to be able to actually enjoy my family. And then, hey, from there, I'm sure there's going to be things that come up along the way, leveraging new opportunities. But, man, there was a book that I read by Derek Sivers. It's called Hell Yeah or No. And if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. And that book is reigning true at this stage of my life, because there's things that I'm saying no to today that 5 years ago, if you would have thought that I'd say no to this, I'd punch you. What in the world? This is amazing. Why wouldn't you take this? But again, I value eating a jelly biscuit on a Friday morning with my son. You couldn't pay me $500 an hour to trade that time. So just to shoot you straight, it's more or less the focus on my family while continuing to maximize our current operation at Zingler Strength.
You got to get some more Notre Dame football games too. You gonna try to get
Yeah.
any more of those in?
Yeah, we're gonna go. I think next weekend. Oh, shoot,
Okay.
I got to look at the schedule. We're going up to the Southern Cal game. But yes, those are always nice trips. Try to take Dad enjoys going as well, and then once my son gets another year or so under his belt, we'll be regularly making the trek up there. But yeah, with my wife pregnant now, having another one coming, we're I don't want to say we're in crisis mode, but there's not a whole lot of free minutes, during the day when you're managing
No.
the business. We've got I do some consulting as well with other gym owners, some mentorship, online programming, getting to my kids' games. It's so funny. My wife's like, "Oh, let's go on a vacation," and it's like, that's the worst thing. I know she wants to do it, but like, I want to be at my gym right now. And it's one of those things that, again, I'm so into it that it's staying content and keeping my eye on the main thing versus all the other glitter that's out there.
That's what the vacation thing's hard for me. Like I'm just like mentally, I'm not there on vacation. I'm here physically, but I'm not there mentally.
Right. It's hard. It's honestly, man, I struggle with it. It's like, oh, we'll go away for a week, 3 days in, I'm ready to come back. And,
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't that, but that's just how I am.
Yeah. Notre Dame squeaked out a close one there against Duke.
They did. That
was a close game there.
I thought it was big to see them go on the road, and especially after that Ohio State game to put it together. That's one that you can obviously overlook. And Duke's got it down. They've got a good quarterback. They run the ball well. They play good defense. That wasn't a pushover. Obviously saw them beat Clemson, but yeah, I like Freeman. I think those guys are in good hands. I think the landscape of college football, not that it's not already shifted, but I think that's going to continue to shift even more with Dion and the NIL stuff. Hell, here in Georgia, they just passed the NIL off for the high school kids, so now the high school kids can leverage NIL and all this. And, it's a slippery slope. I understand that anybody, regardless of their age, should be able to benefit from, their name, image, likeness. But at the same time, I think it's going to create some issues for, you look at some of these booster clubs that may have more money than others. And if there's no transfer rules, now they're going to be buying players. And what you're going to have is 5 top teams in the state, right? And then you're going to have everybody else that gets watered down. So I
saw something in Missouri. They talked about if you're an athlete that wants to get name, image, and likeness money, you have to sign with a school that's actually in Missouri, or you could forfeit your amateur status as a high schooler.
Correct. Is
it the same in Georgia?
I think Georgia is a little bit more Wild West right now, because they're doing this. There's going to be a spring league that's coming next year where they're going to pick like the big cities, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, just these different pockets where they're going to have this spring football league. And essentially what they're trying to do, from what I've read, is like, you've heard of like the IMG academies of the world. They're basically trying to make these like super teams in these big cities to, again, enhance recruiting, which is already an operation in and of itself. And I understand it, but what I don't like is the watering down from the concept of amateur athletics as a whole, right? Now it's like those kids that aren't those big time 5-star recruits. How many of them are going to walk away from the game just because, well, all the priority is on the Power 5 kid?
Sure.
You know what I mean? I still think sports in general, they do more for that middle of the road kid than they do for anybody else. But we place the least amount of emphasis on that because we're looking at the 5-star that's 6'6", 230.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a tough road, I think. But
do you think that I think high schools are kind of a safe net away from like all these organizations that are pay to play and things like that? Do you think that the high school model will kind of shift to that pay to play model in any way, or do you see that coming?
It's hard, man, because it's like at the end of the day, outside of football, and I hate to say this, the kids don't need high school sport. You really don't. When you look at lacrosse, basketball with AAU, travel ball with baseball, club soccer, you don't need high school athletics. As much as I'm a high school purist, I think high school athletics are the greatest thing under the sun.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, if we don't make adjustments in the high school realm and we don't quote unquote need high school athletics. Now, if you're paying these coaches more in the club or private scenes, right, and the quality is going to be better, what incentive do I have as a parent to put my kid in a lackluster high school program where the school may or may not be investing in a quality resource as a coach if I can get better instruction, higher quality competition in that private side? Again, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. The point that I'm making is I hope that these high school administrations are paying attention to what's going on outside of this, because again, it's one of those things where you can rub a kid the wrong way in the high school environment. And that coach, who may be a damn good coach who believes in that old school methodology of discipline and all these things, all these values that are important in youth sports, will recognize the guy that they're paying to coach them in the club is telling them everything they want to hear and making them feel like the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I can go play for this asshole in my high school, or I can not play for him and play for the guy who loves me on the club side. You know what I mean? And I still get recruited because club is where all the recruiting takes place. So high schools, they better get on it.
That's such a hard mind shift, because my high school baseball coach was that. He's an asshole, but I mean, I love him to this day.
You learn. Yeah, exactly.
One of the best. I mean, that's why I had a hard time when I went to college with the coaches that I had. I just didn't feel like they were on the same level. They didn't treat us they didn't push. I mean, it had a different feel to it. I think we're losing. A lot of those coaches don't even get supported anymore. I feel like.
Hell no. They get run off.
Yeah.
I just had a buddy of mine. He's a coach at a high school right here in Georgia. They fired him. He went to the state championship last year. They fired him because he was too hard on the kids.
Yeah.
And by too hard, he held morning workouts as shoot-arounds in the gym. It's like, so what do? You go and you hire the next guy who's more palatable, who's not going to be as successful as this previous coach was. Now you're dealing with kids who are already playing AAU. So now you ruin the quality of the high school experience with a coach that doesn't yield the results that this previous coach does. And now why are they going to buy into your high school program?
Coaches just have to be yes men almost in the high school.
Yeah, they do.
Administrators, I know being an administrator is a tough job. I don't ever want to say that it's not, but they've got to stop caving to some of these parents that keep walking through their door on a daily basis, for sure.
But again, in the public school setting, man, it's like you look at it from a perspective, and I get it. And like, it's easy, and I appreciate you acknowledging it, because one of the athletic directors at the school that I went to, that I'm affiliated with, great guy. It's like a lot of people want to jump on him because, you need to do this. We don't understand how many different things are going through his head. And at the end of the day too, that guy's in a career for himself to where, hey, he's put the time and the effort in. You get to, X number of years and there's a pension associated with it. So what do? Do you go out on a limb and try to do what's quote unquote right at the expense of being right in the modern world can often be translated as wrong. And then now he loses a job. You know what I mean? So it's very hard. It's easy for me to say, well, that guy needs to fire. What I don't know what I don't know that goes on their side of the equation when you're looking at it from hey, we're all in this to make a living for our families. Are there better coaches or administrators than others? Of course. But, I still think there's a lot that people don't understand that goes into why certain people act or don't act the way they might want to, given all of the parameters and red tape placed on a lot of these people.
I think people seem like coaches are the most untrustworthy people in the world. Like, they don't have, most coaches go into it because they love what they do and they want to help people.
Right.
But parents just see that as the complete opposite now. I feel like it's like, well, they're just trying to screw my kid over. They're trying to, it's such a backwards mentality to where it's like, when I was growing up, my dad's like, I don't care if you don't like your coach or not. Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
If you want to play, you're going to respect him and you're going to do what he asks you to do.
Show up. So. Yeah. It's like the football program here at the school that I'm affiliated with. They're having a down year. It's been a tough couple of years. But anyway, you'll get peanut gallery folks. They need to fire this head coach. He sucks and this. And I'm like, that guy is there 4:00 in the morning, 6 days a week, doing everything he can. There's so much that goes into a quality program from a standpoint of coaching, personnel. The senior class this year was the freshman COVID year. So the kids weren't in the school to recruit the school, to get kids to play. There's so much that goes into it that it's easy to say from a chair that, that coach sucks, fire him. who are you going to go get, right? Like what are you going to do, to fix a situation that has 19 different levers, So I think it's important to, obviously you want to have the best resources for your
Yeah.
kids anywhere you can, but it's also to recognize like that guy you think sucks probably has a little bit more on his plate than what you can see, right? So I try to give people the benefit of the doubt with it, man.
Now I will say on a professional level, Alex being a Broncos fan, he'll agree with me, and I'm a Raiders fan. I'm ready to fire Josh McDaniels, and
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Alex is ready to get rid of Vance Joseph, and maybe
Fuck that guy.
Sean Payton's in a little hot water, but they did come back and beat the Bears this week, so
right.
Dude,
Well, the
Vance
Bears,
Joseph couldn't stop a fucking nosebleed if you needed to.
right, right. Well, and at the end of the day, too, at the pro level, it's NFL is not for long for the players, and hey, it should be true for the coaches too. Because if you're gonna have an input on somebody's career, whether you cut them or keep them, you better produce right now, or they'll find somebody else that'll do it.
Did you guys see the Mark Davis video that's going around where the fans at SoFi were yelling "Fire McDaniel," like pointing at him, and Mark was getting back at him and giving him the thumbs up, and like it's like, good Lord, man, that's a whole nother world. The NFL,
for sure, absolutely. And
results oriented.
Yeah, and you got to, and yes, you want to have the same success type principle in all levels, but again, the lower you go down the chain, I don't care if you're in the highest income area in the world or the lowest resource area, there's a lot of red tape that the average Joe doesn't think into or take into account when it comes to making some of these decisions, whether that's how many teaching positions are even available. There's so much that goes into it.
Schools are a lot of time at the mercy of who applies. Like it's
right.
That's tough.
For sure. And yeah, you let one guy go and you think the next situation's going to be better, and then it's not, and then you rubbed that guy. There's a lot, man. There's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, I feel like I've taken all the spotlight and the questions from you. Do you have anything that you burning a hole in your mind to ask Ray?
I don't know now. I had some. I should have wrote them down.
Sorry, my bad.
All right.
No, you're good.
I took the spotlight too long to ask too many questions. I apologize.
No, just keep it going at this point.
Yeah. Now I'm out. That's why I was like, well, maybe Alex has got something. I'll bring him in.
Right. Well, no, I'm an open book. I got another 30 minutes, or we can wrap it up now. Whatever.
What's the next book? You said it's a little bit about training. Is it going to be something similar, a little bigger, smaller?
Yeah. It's going to be more. It's again more of the. It's called Fundamentals Over Flash, and it's basically going to be
this guy's a marketing genius, by the way. That's
yeah, and it's trademark. So if anybody wants to try to come after that, I'll bow up to him. But no, what that will be is more or less obviously sharing some of the ins and outs of the actual programming of how I create these templates and why I believe these are important and where my influences come from. Because at the end of the day, all training is stolen, right? I can sit here and sound like a smart guy that made this up. Everything that I'm putting together is years and years and years of digesting the Joe DeFrancos and Jim Wendlers and Louis Semmett. It's all that, because at the end of the day, you look at it from like a West Side Barbell perspective. Everybody thinks Louis Simmons is the godfather, and he is an American. I appreciate him. But at the end of the day, too, if you read Super Training, you'll understand where Louis got his stuff from, the overseas and this and that. So it's all regurgitated information. But anyway, it's kind of taking the stuff that I found that worked very well for me and blending it all together into a simplistic format that, other coaches or people in general could use to build out training programs for their kids. And then there's going to be an element of it too. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time debunking all of the nonsense, but I will shed some light on why there are certain things that are perceived to work that don't actually work. And I'll defend that and explain that in lay terms. Nobody wants a science book. They want a book that you can read. And then the last final component of that book will have a lot to do with some of the beyond sets and reps type stuff, with some of the building relationships with the kids and the importance of them understanding how much you care and how you can apply some of the mentorship and love that may not be training related, but how that has a positive impact on training. Again, not going to speak out of my lane and go into the depths of the psychological aspect of it, but having some pretty unique experiences with kids that have been in some pretty hot water in their own personal lives, and seeing what a a barbell and giving a shit about a kid can do for them, I think it's worth sharing.
Yeah. Giving people, giving some chances to people that probably other people might look at them and say, no, like,
Right.
I'm not touching that person. I'm not going
That's
there.
that's the kid I want. Give him to me, man. I'll
Yeah.
take him all day long. I'll take him all day long.
I tell that to people all the time. I'm like, and I think you touched on it earlier about with your high school sports is not really for the guy that already stands out. It's for those kids that need something to be feel like they're belonging to. So
For sure.
I love those kids that everyone overlooks and that everyone thinks is that they've already written them off. Like, well, yeah, they might not play a college sport, but who cares? You're like,
Right.
you're trying to
Right.
give them something that'll later benefit them in life with this training that you're giving them.
Absolutely, man. I always say that strength and conditioning is a vehicle to reach these kids in a positive light. That if I can help them, it's not necessarily about the workout, but if I can help them build and develop quality habits that translate to their success later in life, that's a win, man. 1% are going to play pro sports, right? So it's not that I'm sitting here claiming to be the guru that can create the pro athlete. At the end of the day, and I think you guys would probably agree, the pro athlete is already created long before we get our hands on them. A lot of training elite level athletes is ensuring they don't get hurt, right? That's really all the majority of the training of those guys is. Not that that's not important, but I just saw, and Zach Evanesh speaks on it a lot. I saw how much of a difference, and Jim Windler's another one who speaks on this, you can make at this age. And it's like pro athlete or non-pro athlete. You get a guy that's going to show up 3 days a week and do something hard from the age of 12 to 18. I'm not saying he's going to be a saint at 25, but he's probably going to have enough discipline to be able to carry him into whatever endeavor comes into his life. So I look at it from a standpoint of general resilience that travels beyond sport. And that's why I'm passionate about, oh, well, my kid, he's only been a JV player. He's been a rec ball player. I don't know if this strength and conditioning thing's for him because he's probably not going to play in college. Ma'am, this strength and conditioning thing, there isn't a higher quality candidate for this thing than your son who you just described. There's not a single one that could benefit more from this. And I'm not talking about taking him from a rec ball player to running out of the tunnel, at Sanford Stadium at UGA. I'm talking about maybe maximizing his current athletic experience, but then, imputing or putting on him qualities that translate beyond sport. Because at the end of the day, we can prioritize sport all we want, but these kids are going to be professional people far longer than they're going to even play the game of sport. That's why I joke about strength and conditioning. Your lifespan of competitive sport usually is 8 years, right? You're going to need health and fitness for 80 years. I'm not good at math, but 8 is a shitload less than 80. So if we're going to need this strength and conditioning or fitness or whatever we want to call it for 80 years, to not prioritize it now is a disservice, because a lot of times people think that, oh, we get to 20 years old and we realize we just got to be healthy and we'll just figure it out then. No, that's why we have an obesity and a health problem epidemic in our country, is because people have such low fitness literacy. They don't understand. Right now, from 8 to 18, sometimes 8 to 24, 26, whenever sport comes to a career, they have an accountability stimulus injected into their life. They've got to be at practice. For college athletes, they got to be at the chow hall. For the pro athletes, they have all the massages. They've got all the stuff that's given to them right now. Why do you think a lot of these NFL guys, they go from having 12 to 30 people waiting on them hand and foot, feeding them luxurious foods and making sure they eat the right things? And then what happens at 34? They're these guys with a slowing metabolism who have nothing but money, who want to eat fried food. And that's why that NFL player at 40 looks like a damn offensive tackle when in reality he was a skill guy. You know what I mean? It's because they don't have that accountability discipline forced upon them, and you have to take it upon yourself, which is why I think there's no greater outlet than learning to self-induce struggle. I choose to do that constructively in the realm of strength and conditioning.
That's true holistic right there, because that word gets thrown around a lot, like holistic training and all that stuff. But like what you're training right there and those qualities are actually a true holistic approach, in my opinion.
Right. And that's why I don't lose my mind on 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12. At the end of the day, are we looking for a volume stimulus? Or are we looking for a max output stimulus? Okay, so it's 1 to 5 or 8 to 12. Like, I make it so simple so that I can pour into the communication with the athlete beyond this stuff. Again, it's a similar thing like a landmine press. I could sit here and do a half kneeling balance on a Bosu ball, bottoms up shoulder press, and I could spend all my time like cueing him in abs tight, butt tight, core, blah, blah. Or I can give him a landmine that's a lot more comfortable. He can get a stronger strength stimulus from it. And then in between sets, I can talk to him about his math teacher or that girl that he's wanting to ask to homecoming, have those personalized engagements that are going to be far more valuable than me trying to trick him into doing a goofy exercise that's not going to have any carryover. So it's like I talk about, it's 10% X's and O's, 90% the other stuff.
How important is it to see, or those kids to see you at some of their events? I know you get out pretty regularly and go watch those things, but how important do you think that is?
Yeah, man, I treat it like a job. And, it's one of those things that I don't do it because I know it's the good thing to look the part and show face. It's just part of, again, I got a lot of issues in my own life from a standpoint of being far from perfect, but I want to make the point that it's part of my character, and it comes down to habits. It's who I say I am. And if I care about these kids on the level that I say I do, I need to reflect that. It's not for their sake, so their dad sees me and fist bumps me. Sure, I enjoy the engagement there, but that's who I said I was, and that's who I'm going to be. And then obviously to see those kids bust their ass in a general environment that they don't have to be at. They're making a choice to come train at Zingler Strength. And then to see them rip a double on the softball field and grin at me ear to ear hanging on the fence, there ain't a damn dollar in the world you could give me to replace that feeling, man. It's special.
Yeah, that's pretty great. That's awesome. Alex, did any questions come back to you in your time of waiting?
No, I do need to say thanks though, because I secretly try to compete with you writing and I fucking lose all the time. But it's improved my writing tremendously, so it's something.
That's
But
why I do it. And again, listen, man, you can say that, but again, anything you put out in the world adds value to others. And listen, there's guys that kick my ass in writing too, but that's the whole thing, right? It's being able to leverage, motivation or encouragement from other people to move the needle in your life. Writing is one of the most important things in my life. So obviously I'm going to prioritize that. But there are things even in my own life. For example, I'm big into training dogs. We have a lot of dogs. I've got a lot of people in the dog community that are spending 7 days a week training dogs. And I love it. And I'd love to. I don't have the bandwidth to, but I get to them twice, 3 times a week. And if I didn't see those other people busting their ass in that world, I wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have the leverage to do what I'm doing. So I may not be quote unquote their level, but now I'm doing what I know is, meaningful to me because somebody else encouraged me, and that's why I post every day. That's why I post nobody gives a shit about seeing me in a damn pair of short shorts doing goblet squats. Nobody cares about that. But at the same time, if I can show I want you to be consistent with it, I'm going to live it, man. I'm going to do it every day. And I'm not showing you because I'm trying to flex on you or any of that nonsense. I'm doing it because if there's somebody out there that's struggling and they know they need to be consistent, that damn Zingler Strength thing's going to come up on their feed. And, oh, he spam posts and he posts too much. There's one guy out there that's going to go train today in Utah because they saw Ray said to live it. Now I'm going to go do it too. And I think that's the beautiful side of social media, not the shirtless dudes posting ab pics and girls wearing damn, yoga pants that are too small,
yeah, no, I get it. People actually think I like to wake up and be at the gym at 4 a.m. I'm like,
Right.
you fucking think I like this?
Right.
No. But for me to be good for everyone else, like that's
Right.
just what has to happen.
You got to do it. That's
No other way.
exactly it. It's like I like people. And it's funny. I go out to dinner with friends or parties, and it's like I don't like. And then again, it goes back to that like love affinity with training. It's like I don't even like it, right? Like I would much rather like sit on my ass and read a book in the sun and like not do it. But again, part of the DNA shift in my mind is like it's one of those things, you use the love-hate relationship thing or whatever. It's not that I hate it. Obviously, I enjoy partaking in it, but it's on such a higher level than the average person, not higher level, like strength wise, or like what I'm talking about, the affinity side of it, that it's like, you always got motivated. I haven't been motivated since I ripped my pec off in 2011. You know what I mean? Like I'm just doing it because I really don't I don't have a choice. Nick Saban makes a great quote that he's like, if you want to be great, the reality of it is you don't have a lot of choices because greatness takes what it takes. I'm trying to be really, really great at strength and conditioning. And that's as a coach, that's as a trainee, that's as a disciplinarian. And I'm going to, I don't get to pick, man. Like if what I'm saying? I don't get to choose that. I have to do that because that is required of what it takes for me to be who I say I want to be. I don't get to pick, and I think that once people make that lifestyle, and I use that with quotes too, because I think, at the end of the day, I'm not saying for people to be successful in fitness, they've got to have this like addiction that I do, but you do have to make it a part of your lifestyle. It's easy to get motivation for 90 days when the gym down the road opens up and they do a 3-month special, right? It's easy to get like pumped up for the new thing, but can you make it the same as brushing your teeth? And if you can do that, you'll have a lot of success in fitness, you know?
I heard that quote from you, Alex, with the cars, doing the cars routine. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't really want to do it, but
I liken the cars to flossing because everyone
Flossing,
fucking
that's what
does
it
not
was.
floss at all. That's an even further step.
Right.
ugh.
Right. Yeah. Dan John is a guy, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but look into him. He flosses his teeth every day. He knows it's good for his health benefits, but it's also something that he injects into his day, knowing that it's a pain in the ass and it sucks. And that's just one little vote that he gets to make for himself from an extra disciplinarian standpoint of flossing your teeth. Yes, there's a benefit to it, but it's also the monotony and the nonsense of having to do this little nuanced thing that he leverages value from. That's why I think the whole cold tub stuff, you know, I understand there's health benefits or whatever, but you know, and I never really got into it. I'll do a cold shower here and there, but I think the benefit is not the physical benefits of cold exposure. I mean, yes, those are there, but it's doing something that sucks, right? If you do something that sucks, now the next thing that comes up in life that sucks might suck 1% less. You know what I mean? And there's value there.
Yep. That's why I start my day at a time I don't ever want to wake up at.
Yep.
Right.
You told me 10 years ago you're getting up at 3:30 in the morning almost every day. I'd be like, go fuck yourself. No, I'm not.
Right.
It's not happening.
Right.
I tell people that all the time. They're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, makes the rest of my day look like a peach. Like, it's easy. If I'm up at 4 and I'm done by like 9 a.m. usually, what's
Right.
the rest of my day look like?
For
It's
sure.
Yeah,
it's a
there's
cakewalk.
that aspect to it. And then it's like you woke up. So there's
Right.
that. That's
Right,
always
for
cool.
sure. That's a plus.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Man.
Absolutely.
Blessed to wake up and do what we get to do.
I did think of a question. How many reps have you gotten in on those fucking grip crushers while you've been sitting here?
Oh, I just sit with it. I
You're
sit here.
addicted. You can't help it.
I fidget. I'm playing with a pocket knife in my left hand and the gripper in my right hand. So probably a ton.
I was just figuring. I was like, man, I thought I liked to work out a lot, but I don't have any grip crushers
No,
to fucking
well,
hold on to while we do this.
I have them all over my like office in my truck or whatever. I think it's one of those where you remember those like fidget spinners the kids used to have and all that. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, at the end of the day, you know, they say that grip strength has a lot to do with like longevity, you know, when you get back to like just the everyday life. So if I can, and I didn't even think about it until you said it, I'd mess with this thing so damn much, but it's like, I'm getting a micro training session in and I'm just sitting here enjoying myself chatting with you guys. That's something too. Like I'm on all my consulting or mentorship calls. I use that to get my walks in. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we build this like stigma around fitness that it's got to be like this 30-minute or 60-minute hour-long workout with a dynamic warm-up, and you have to have this principle and that principle. I'm programming for a guy right now, and one of his days, I said, put a kettlebell in a random place in your house, preferably one that'll piss your wife off, and every time you walk by it, pick it up. So I really picked the damn thing up 113 times, and now like that wasn't like buy the book, and you're not going to read about that in a training manual. But again, that's 113 choices he made to do something that, you know, relatively speaking, it was easier not to pick that up than it was to pick that up. So by making 113 choices that he didn't really have to think about other than walking by this black piece of iron and picking it up, what if you do that once a week for 25 years? What's, you know, like, whoa, you know what I mean?
How often do you catch yourself in the middle of those things going, man, I don't really want to do this. And then you go, wait, just go do it.
Right.
Just knock it off.
All the time. That's why, and I've been picking up a little bit, you know, my dad was a big influence on me. You know, he used to like to train in the afternoons and he'd work all day. And then I saw him in his 50s, you know, the days would run away from him. So he started baking his workouts. And now to this day, he puts them earlier in the day. I'm a late morning type workout guy. Not that I won't do something at 5 or 6 o'clock at night, but again, just from a general statistics perspective, if I find a way to inject that training into my day earlier in the day, the likelihood of me accomplishing that are higher. And you can get into the like, well, it's terrible to work out first thing in the morning. It's better in the evening. Everybody's different, right? And if my goal is frequency over everything, let me punch that stuff earlier in the day to ensure that I get it in. You know what I mean? So it's one of those that, like, again, another thing that's helped me tremendously is like I don't allow outside influences to impact the trajectory of my day. And what I mean, it's hard, and I'm a puss, man. I used to get sick when I was younger, and screw this shit. I eat my vegetable. Like, I don't deserve that. And I get mad. Now it's like, whether I feel good, bad, or indifferent, whether I'm busy, happy, sad, I don't like, I'm going to do my training session. Now, will I adjust my training session based on how I'm feeling? If I've got an injury or if I don't feel well, of course I will, but I'm still going to do it. And then now, what does that do for me? It contributes to my robustness, because if I can be as busy as I am and not feel good and still find a way to get it in, what happens when I have that Friday where I'm feeling great? I don't have that many appointments and I go get that awesome workout in. You know what I mean? So I've learned to lean in to those uncomfortable feelings, because again, life is full of a lot of good days, a lot of bad days, and a shit ton of regular days. If I can be pretty consistent on my regular days and really consistent on my bad days, if I get 10 good days a year, man, holy shit, we're cooking, you know?
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say I stack the cards against myself. I work out fasted first thing in the morning. I don't like it's not performance wise, it's not good. I can tell
Right.
you that.
For sure. For sure. And that goes back to like what we were talking about with the student athlete nutrition and whatever, you know, it's like at the end of the day, I'm not going to get on here and say that I don't believe in nutrition and diet and eating the right food. Of course I do, right? Like, of course I do. But have you ever seen a 16-year-old kid come in on 2 Bang energy drinks, hit a damn thing of smelling salts and deadlift 580 pounds? You know what I mean? Like, of course that's not like ideal, and we don't need to do that every single time. But there is an element of like, the end of the day, our ancestors walked around 20 miles a day with no shoes on, with a damn carcass on their shoulder, and I've got to make sure Jimmy's Whoop band told him he's recovered enough to deadlift. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? Some of the best leg training days I've ever had in my life, it'd be on Friday nights at midnight. You know, I'd play my high school football game at 7:30. I'd go eat 2 large pizzas in the field house afterwards. I'd come home thinking I'm damn Dorian Yates at midnight, and I'd train legs for 3 hours. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Let the bodies hit the flow on loudspeaker. My mom's cussing me, the whole thing. And it's like, I look back on it. Monday, I couldn't walk at practice because I was so fatigued. But now, call me crazy, but I think like my legs don't get sore. I mean, I got to really jack myself up to get sore anymore, because I built that kind of like resilience slash endurance doing some of that quote unquote dumb stuff, you know?
Speaking of dead carcasses, I know you're ready for deer season right around the road.
Yes. So we got 2 weeks left, man. I'm pumped. That's the one time a year, man, that obviously I never let go of the business. Fortunately, having a good team around me, and obviously with the internet and everything, I'm able to stay up to date, but I will definitely be sneaking away quite a bit late October in month of November, chasing whitetails.
Have you seen, you got any on your cameras?
Yeah, so they just started rolling, man. I was tons of does, and then the bucks were still kind of bachelored up. So I'd have a bunch of the smaller bucks, and then I just got a good 6 on camera last week. So we'll let it go. Usually I try to stay out of the woods as much as I can during this time of year to let them pattern and figure things out. But the cameras are rolling, so it's just a matter of time before I'm out there sitting in the woods.
Are you a let it roll kind of guy if you see like a 6 point, or are you just gonna, are you shoot to kill whatever you can get?
So I'm not I've got buddies, man. They'll go out to damn Iowa and they'll see giants.
Oh yeah.
Freaking, you know, they'll let damn rocking chair bucks with a rocking chair on their head walk. I'm not there. I won't shoot a yearling or like a real small buck, but I'm still not at the point where, again, I hunt in the mountains, and the North Georgia mountains are they're hard to hunt, you know, from a wind perspective and all that. So a good buck in the mountains in North Georgia might be a smaller buck down in some of like the ag fields in South Georgia. So I think it's, personally speaking, it's all relative to the environment, you know. So I'm not if it's brown, it's down guy, but with two buck tags, I'm not against getting on the board relatively early.
There you go. Yeah, come on over to northern Missouri. That southern Iowa, northern Missouri, man. There's some good deer up there.
Yeah, that's the real deal, man. The problem is these damn farmers. You gotta pay them an arm and a leg to get on their land.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, people are particular around here for sure about where you can and can't hunt. Missouri is pretty tight knit group.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Missouri, Illinois. You know, it's funny. They say the only thing, you know, more expensive than a deer lease in Illinois is actually owning property. Some of these guys will charge more than what the damn thing's worth just to just to get on their land. And
Oh
then they
yeah.
sanction a lot of, what you can or can't shoot, which I understand from a management perspective. I hunt a lot of public land in Georgia, so it's nice that there's restrictions, but it's more or less wherever you can put boots on the ground and hunt, you can hunt. So I enjoy it.
That's awesome. That's good. Well, Ray, I don't have anything else that I can think of at the time. I know we've kept you almost 2 hours here, and we appreciate the time that you've given us for sure. I just want to say thank you for all you do in the strength and conditioning world, and I enjoy what I see on social media. I really look up to you as a strength coach. I really like what you do as a strength coach, and I look forward to seeing what you post every day. So
Well, man, I appreciate that. It's one of those things that you guys, honestly, and I don't mean to sound cliche, but are the guys that I do it for. It's not that I'm trying to sit here and live in my own echo chamber and try to just get people to affirm my belief systems and whatnot. But again, the world is starving for real. We're exposed to a lot of nonsense, a lot of bullshit. It's kind of like I look at I'm a big country music fan. It's like we have the country music stars that are on the radio. They all sound the same. They all have the same music labels. They all do the stuff. And it's these kind of underground outlaw guys that the people are attracted to, but they won't play them on the radio because these guys won't sell out to the labels and they won't have the writers write the songs for them. I look at it very similarly to the strength and conditioning world. It's very easy to make a living manipulating people doing stuff that doesn't work because the consumers believe it works. But if you can find a way to find it in your heart to continue to do the right things for the right reasons, knowing that you're going to wall off a large demographic to begin with, because there's a large demographic that aren't going to want to hear you. They don't have time. We got this, like strength, squat, curl, lunge. Like that doesn't do anything for velocity. Yes, it does. But anyway, like you're going to have those guys that aren't going to buy in. But man, as long as I've done this and every single year it's grown, again, I may be still reaching that smaller percentage, but that smaller percentage is starting to grow and I'm maintaining the efficacy of that correct demographic that I want to be speaking to anyway. And I believe in that. So,
well, keep fighting the good fight, my man. We appreciate all you do. We know how hard it can be to spit the right information out there.
It's a challenge every day, but man, it's one worth fighting. So I appreciate you guys living the code and doing things the right way, man. It's important. It's important.
Absolutely. Well, we're not going to take any more of your time. Again, thank you for coming on. You guys, we'll put Ray's Instagram link down there in the description of this Spotify episode. Go check out his Instagram page. Go check out his Substack. Give his stuff a follow. He's fantastic, and you won't regret it. I promise you that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate being on.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
Ray.
man.
Have a great day.
Take care.